Well, okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this movie. This just going through the research on this thing, it has again its production history is insane. And it seemed like that was a big thing in the 90s is a good idea would come up and it would just take forever to get off the ground. But yes, as one of the things, as Alexis pointed out, is there is a 2 hour and 15-minute version that exists, and Jeffrey Katzenberg basically smacked Warren Beatty over the head continually until he cut it down to 1 hour and 45 minutes. But as also talked about, Al Pacino actually designed his own makeup for this, and then makeup artist John Caglione Jr. Was the makeup artist that actually did put it all together, and they enjoyed working together so much that since then, John Caglione Jr. has been Al Pacino's personal makeup man on all of his movies. However, on the somewhat more sad side of things, apparently Warren Beatty's a bitch to work with because several people turned down this movie and or were fired from it. Of the big names out there that turned it down was Gene Hackman, who said, and quote, he couldn't bear being directed by Warren Beatty again after their experience together on Reds, which was made in 1981. Sean Young, in her continual "I can't get into a superhero movie to save my life," after Batman, was actually fired from this movie when she was originally cast to play Tess Trueheart. And has said that the reason was that she wouldn't sleep with Warren Beatty. However, that's been shot down. Beatty said he just made a mistake and she wasn't, right for the part, and he felt bad about it. But in a continuing thing of Beatty's ego, and then I'll stop there and we can get into the craft review. Beatty decided to do all of his own stunts, which pushed the budget higher than it was supposed to be because they had to ensure this almost 50-year-old man, no offense to anyone about to turn 50, but with all the stunts he was doing, including slamming his face into a light pole, they had to insure him so he didn't break.
I now desperately want to do an on trial for Bulworth, just so we could talk about Warren Beatty. Let me, really quick, before we get into the craft review, if I don't do this now, I won't do it later, and then Robert will be mad at me. So you talk about Warren Beatty being a bitch to work with. Apparently, Warren Beatty is the king of pettiness. I won't tell the story nearly as well as Robert does with just his... he gets so excited by this. But apparently, Warren Beatty owns the intellectual property, Dick Tracy. He owns the rights to it. And because of how things went with, I believe it was Buena Vista Walt Disney Studios, he has held on to those rights by doing like appearances as Dick Tracy, so that it's kind of like the Roger Corman thing with the Fantastic Four, where we just shoot a garbage movie to hold on to the rights.
Yeah, I would say he was the original creator of the I Fan Force Sticked It.
Yeah, so Warren Beatty, up until I think recently, and I think he did it just recently enough that he's got the rights until it goes into public domain and will inevitably become a slasher movie like Popeye. He just does these periodic appearances as Dick Tracy, and that allows him to retain the rights. And he does this so nobody else can have the rights because he's that angry about how he felt he was treated by the studio, which is amazing. And now I just want to dedicate an entire month to Warren Beatty stuff on this network because he is now my patron saint.
It kills me because I think that they could do something new with Dick Tracy, but humor me. I think this needs to be an adult-focused animated property. Not like anime, but like a very stylized animation. I really think if they did something like that on Amazon Prime, I think it would be a smash.
Yeah, as long as you're not willing to put that in theaters, because I have an entire argument and a legal team ready to prosecute you on the idea of this would do well in a theater. However, throwing it on Amazon or Netflix, sure.
I would have to agree.
Doing it as a series on Amazon or Netflix would be really, really fantastic. Like, I don't think Dick Tracy really warrants a full movie on its own, but like having some little episodic content.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I could see that, definitely. Not to mention you'd have more fun playing around with a variety of villains. I mean, how many characters are in this playing background villains? And it's like we have James Caan, Hollywood royalty, who was in the movie for less than 2 minutes.
Something like that, yeah. But yeah, that with on that note, let's get into everybody's favorite part, the craft review, where we tear this thing a new one. Alexis, fire away.
Like I said, this movie is all over the place tone-wise because it clearly had too many editors in the booth with it. It's very hard to get through, and I'm just gonna say it. I can't help but feel like there's a lot of Beatty's ego on display. So many of the shots with him, it's just like, Beatty, you had to make yourself look that good and that smart and everything. Not to mention the crazy amount of plot holes. I never caught why Breathless was so in love with Tracy, except for the plot demands it. I never understood why she decided to become the blank, again, except the plot demands it. There's so many parts, it's just like, I remember watching this movie as a kid and I loved it, but I think I loved it because, again, it's a live action cartoon. You know, it's bright, it's colorful, it's crazy looking. As I watch it as an adult, I go, this movie doesn't make a lick of sense anymore.
No.
I mean, did we really need umpteen shots of Tracy raiding Big Boy Caprice's area and trying to arrest him and all of them talking about how he can't make it stick?
I would agree. I think, and you're kind of sitting on this as well. Sorry, we're having a tech issue with the camera. That's why it went dead. But one of the things that bugged me most about this movie, I'm sure at least one of you will hit on it, but I'm just going to fire the gun off now, is how much lines are repeated.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely no reason. Like,
and a lot of those are ADR lines to boot.
Yeah. Well, the one that gets me the most is when Tracy falls down into the Club Ritz area where Tess was being held, but they lock the door as they get her out of there. And the guy up there can literally see him through the glass. It's like, Tracy, what are you doing down there? Are you hurt? Tracy, what are you doing down there? What are you doing down there? It's like, dude, shut up. But Alexis, continue. Sorry.
I think the one I caught repeated twice was like, why would someone kidnap Tess and not leave a ransom note? It's like, you literally just said that less than 2 minutes ago.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was ADR to help fill up some of the moments. I think the editors were afraid of just letting the movie breathe, which is also a shame because they got freaking Danny Elfman to do the score. And if you're going to have Danny Elfman, use Danny Elfman, especially since Beatty admitted the reason he wanted Elfman was he wanted him because of Batman 89. And the score reflects that. This is a very Batman 89.
It goddamn copied it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it pretty much is the Batman 89 score. It's like, if you're going to have Elfman do exactly what you wanted, then let him do it.
Right. And Mark, I'm assuming we'll get to this in your craft review, but you seem to have some very strong feelings about Mr. Elfman.
Yeah, it's like somebody took a goddamn circus, put in a garbage can, and rolled it down a hill. That man has one beat. One. And it's the same one in Batman, in this one, and every other stupid thing he does.
I take it you are not a fan of our Mr. Elfman.
Sir, I like John Williams.
Fair.
I like Howard Shore. I like music that sounds like music for adults. I'm not interested in Danny Elfman chasing a circus around and recording it and going, composition. Yeah, it drives me a little nuts. I'm a little over Danny Elfman and his same beat.
Fair play. Alexis, please continue if you had anything else.
Again, this is a property that really does need a restart. There is solid stuff there, but it needs to be taken with the right tone. Dick Tracy needs to be tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, we know this is corny. It's from the 30s. Yuck, yuck, yuck. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the kind of thing we need to see done with it. And I want to see done with it. I would love a streaming series focusing on him and the villains. Again, stylized animation. I think it could be amazing.
I would agree. Mark, take it away.
I wish we had talked a little bit about Batman 1989 because there's no way to talk about this movie without comparing it to that.
Right.
Well, can't you compare all three of these movies to it?
Yep.
That was Robert's joke.
So they get Tim Burton to do Batman 1989. He does it very stylized in this very Tim Burton-y way, and it's a huge hit. And Hollywood took all the wrong lessons from it. The lesson they took from Batman 1989 was now it's the old red letter media. What else you got? You know, and they started just digging into the trash can and finding like what other comic book heroes can we make in the exact same style with Danny Elfman's exact same score. And here's the problem. There needs to be one nerd with ultimate power in these studios that can come into a room and say what I'm about to say. And this may come as a shock to some people, and I don't want to trigger anyone, but hear me out. Dick Tracy and Batman are not the same guys.
No.
And as goofy as Batman has been throughout the years, I mean, we tend to only think now of Batman being either, you know, Chris Nolan's Batman or Frank Miller's Batman, as if nobody else ever had a handle on this character. But Batman went to fucking space. And, you know, there was a period where Batman fought aliens. Batman has been a goofy as fuck character.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, and it's, I wish people now remembered as fondly as I do Batman 66. Because it is a great representation of what Batman has also been. But instead, we got Tim Burton's Batman, and then everyone got goldfish brain and forgot everything else about Batman, and that's all Batman's been since. Fast forward to this Dick Tracy movie. You know, Dick Tracy is this, yes, he's a hard-boiled noir character, but he was also in the funny pages. There was a lot, you know, Dick Tracy fought like the Legion of Doom style superheroes by the way that they looked. I mean, we joked about it before with the makeup and everything, but like he's fighting people like Eraserhead and, you know, Hammerhead, you know, like this nonsense.
There we go. David Lynch directs Dick Tracy.
For the record, when Daffy faced him, it was Rubberhead.
Yeah.
We got to rub ya.
Honestly, can we get a Cronenberg to do this? Let's go with some real body horror if that's the direction you want to go.
Right.
Just slowly driving Dick Tracy mad. Like, they all look like they're monsters, you know, and he just shoots himself at the end. That's the movie I'd make. And Robert would totally produce that for me.
Oh.
Anyway. A movie where Dick Tracy kills himself? Yes. Robert, we can't have someone kill themselves at the end of every movie. We certainly can, and that's what we're paying you for. Okay, Robert. Anyway,
he's like John Peters with his giant spider.
Yeah.
Anyway, a half an hour ago, you asked me what did I think of this movie. Other than it is the wrong tone, the wrong style, the wrong representation of this movie, it's entertaining. I actually think it needed to be about 90 minutes. They had 90 minutes worth of story here that they stretched out way too long. There's a shit ton of repetition. I wish we had done the plot synopsis.
I thought I did.
Nope.
I was saying like the whole thing is him trying to chase down Big Boy Caprice and get him indicted.
That was your plot synopsis? Oh,
that was my plot synopsis. Because that's basically the whole plot of the movie is he's trying to catch Al Pacino.
Well, I think that's great that I then blinked and missed it because that's a problem with the movie is it isn't very clear why he's getting away with things. And it's not clear why Dick Tracy, who is this master detective and honored police, can't seem to figure this out. And it's like, well, you can't figure out how to get Big Boy Caprice until we're ready for the third act, and then you can. And we're going to fill this, you know, they also, I remember thinking remembering that Madonna was more prominent in the movie than she actually is. And now watching it again, I was like, oh, I wish there had been more. Like Warren Beatty and Madonna have a lot more sexual chemistry on the screen than the other gal that he's paired with, whose name escapes me, but
Tess Trueheart.
Yeah, her. And I wish they had done more with Madonna. I think she's actually kind of wasted in this movie. Like the singing and dancing that they have her do is fine. Like if you want to, you know, pad the runtime with this, give more to Madonna, especially during that period. the costumes are fun. You know, they're the only bit of color in the movie. I had forgotten about the kid, and I guess as a child, he did not resonate. When I watched this as a kid, I was focused on Dick Tracy and what part of the boy's power fantasy he presents. So I'm not looking at the kid with the bottomless fucking stomach. However, as an almost 50-year-old with his own son, I was keying into the sort of the father-son dynamic between Dick Tracy and the kid. The kid's funny, you know. That montage of when do we eat, a little too long. Like we could have cut that guitar solo down just a few notes, but before it overstayed its welcome, it was a funny bit of comedy in a movie that sorely needed it. You know, overall, in retrospect, I still like Dick Tracy for what it represents in the history of film. And I certainly think that there are some great performances, some great over-the-top performances. It's kind of like... All right, everyone, here's your wrestling reference of the night. It's like the Beware of Dog pay-per-view to me. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, indulge me for a moment. They in the 90s, they did a pay-per-view in North Carolina, and there was a storm that was so bad the lights went out. Didn't really affect the matches. Everyone, you have like The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, you know, British Bulldog. You have like really good wrestlers in this era of the 90s that can handle, you know, wrestling in the dark. But it was still wrestling in the dark. And people, you know, however good the matches might have been, people are like, I can't see shit here. Like, what are we doing? And, you know, and then eventually the lights came on for the main event, and they had to redo the whole thing the following Tuesday. And that's kind of it kind of reminds me of this movie, where a lot of good stuff happening here, a lot of great performances, great costumes. Wish I could see it. It's all in the dark, and it didn't need to be. It is people going, well, Batman was all in the dark because he's Batman.
It's kind of how he rolls, except in the 60s when he was out in the daylight all the time.
I wish Richard Donner's Superman had come out in 1990 instead of Batman, because then Dick Tracy would have looked like Richard Donner's Superman, and we'd be talking about a much better movie.
Probably. All right, Chae, what are your thoughts on what everyone else has said, and your own thoughts, of course?
So this movie does have some problems. I think a good chunk of the problems with this movie are in the writing, because my specialty is makeup, and with the makeup and the production design, I absolutely loved it. The stylization of this film is absolutely fantastic. It feels like a noir version of Singing in the Rain, with the painted backdrops and the skewed buildings. It feels very old Broadway to me.
What was that, Mark? A silly version of what?
Or a silly version of LA Confidential.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Just with Les Kim Basinger having sex with Russell Crowe. That's what would have saved Dick Tracy.
And it does have some pacing problems and some issues with the storyline. But I think overall it's a very visually interesting film, with the costumes and the character designs and the set designs. And it just, I think how pretty this movie is really overtakes some of the weirder aspects of the script, and just generally makes it a really enjoyable film.
I would agree, absolutely. I think I honestly think that I agree with most of what everyone said here today. I agree it has some issues with it, and it's not perfect by any means. But what I will say, and I think this is what kind of saves the movie, is you can tell this is a passion project for Warren Beatty. You can tell he loves this character very, very much. Even going so far as trying to fight the producers to actually give him the squared jaw and hooked nose, but the producers are like, "We're not covering up your face. You're Warren Beatty," you know.
And then they pan to Johnny Depp crying in the corner. Why won't they give me crooked teeth and make me look ugly? For the last time, Johnny, you're a handsome man, you psycho.
Right.
It's a Pirates of the Caribbean joke, everybody.
Right. Actually, technically, Willy Wonka won because he wanted weird fucking makeup for Charlie
Yeah,
and the Chocolate
he
Factory
did.
as well.
An ongoing thing with Johnny Depp. Someone make me look ugly, and it's fine. Give me 5 minutes with Johnny Depp. I'll ugly him up for you.
Don't worry. Amber Heard will take care of that for you, buddy.
Hey!
Damn it! I was about to say that. You stole my joke.
Hang on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But no, overall, I would say Dick Tracy is a fun, watchable film. I would suggest it, like, if you're gonna get drunk with your friends, go ahead and pop this bitch on. I still enjoy it, but it's because, like, I saw it on, like, VHS in, like, the early 2000s and was like, again, I was kind of like your son, Mark, was just like, what fresh hell is this? I thought the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles were messed up, but step aside, Sean Patrick Flannery. Warren Beatty's got you beat. But yeah, last thoughts before we move on to the next movie. And I'll just start with you, Alexis, and we'll go around the horn again. Would you recommend this? Would you say stay away from it?
I would say okay. I do not recommend it now. I recommend it.
Go back in time.
Go into the future when we get the new version of it. Once Warren Beatty just chills the fuck out
or dies,
and then it's like, okay,
again, going into public domain shortly.
Okay, once it does that, then go see it, because then you're gonna have more of an appreciation for it.
Fair enough, Mark.
So I have 2 kids.
Fuck this movie and the horse it rode in on.
No. I have other movies to say that about. No, I have 2 kids and only watched it with one of them. And sometimes there are certain movies where I'm like, Lily, this is a movie you have to sit through. This is important to your, to your education as a film student. And then there are movies I'm just like, nah, you can skip it. You're not going to get anything out of this. However, Jonas, who is like me and was, and looked at me with doe eyes one day and a sparkle, and he said, Father, he called me Father, and he said, Father, show me all the great movies. And I went, well, buckle in, pal, because I've got, like, how old am I? 48 years of movies to show you. And some that were before my time.
This is gonna be interesting.
So that is my cheeky way of saying I would recommend this to people who are film people. I would not recommend this to dirty casuals.
Makes sense. Chae, take us home. At least on this one.
I would definitely recommend this movie. It's a fun comic booky, back when comic book movies were all shit, film.
There was Batman, and then
that period of the birth of the talkies until Iron Man.
I just realized, actually, this is the first comic book adaptation that Disney did. And when you look at what they've been doing now, it's like, okay, regardless of whether or not it's a good movie, that does kind of get a little accolade.
Yeah, well, and again, it was originally supposed to be under the Disney banner, but they didn't think it was, much like they didn't think Nightmare Before Christmas was going to do any good. It went under the Touchstone and Buena Vista banner. But anyway, Chae, back to you.
But yeah, I definitely recommend it for, honestly, anybody that wants to drink and watch a movie at the same time.
Helping alcoholics everywhere. Thanks, Dick Tracy.
I'm going to rebrand this network, the Alcohol and Broadcasting Network. I can't tell you how many of these podcasts are, if you're thinking about drinking heavily.
Okay, would it be better watching Dick Tracy to be drunk or to get high?
I would not
recommend this movie on I would not recommend this movie on psychedelics. You will have a bad trip.
Yeah, no, that's actually what I was saying when you were talking about how Jonas reacted. I don't know if you heard me, but I was like, Dad, did you give me LSD?
No, Dorian, I would not give my son drugs.
Maybe that should be the new focus. It's like, okay, what drugs or / alcohol should you be on to watch this movie? Is this a get through it with a nice glass of wine? Is this you're going to need a whole freaking bottle of bourbon? Or is this just find the psychedelic mushrooms?
So real quick, I whenever I go on movies that don't suck and some that do, they ask me to rate a movie because I'm a giant asshole. I won't cooperate. So they're like, well, I think the first few times I kept asking them what their rating scale was. I'm like, you've been on the show before. What, do you not listen? And I'm like, what? So I think now, whenever they ask me to rate the movie, I'm going to be like, all right, this is 3 bumps of cocaine.
Fair.
This is a shot of Jameson.
So okay, with that in mind, how are you rating Dick Tracy?
Oof.
2 beers and McDonald's.
I was gonna say that this is smokable.
Oh, God.
Possibly 2.